So hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies podcast. I'm Spike Knight, and in these podcasts I like talking all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, I'm reviewing this new horror film called Abigail. So, let's get into it, shall we? Abigail, as already mentioned, is this new horror film from the filmmaking team known as Radio Silence. And Radio Silence were also behind Scream 5 and Scream 6. Neither of those films I thought were particularly good and didn't capture that same magic as the original Scream movie, as the original first two Scream films, actually, because I really like Scream 2 as well, but Scream 5 and Scream 6 did not work for me. But Radio Silence also directed Ready or Not, which I watched for the first time last week, and I really enjoyed that film. It was far better than it had any right to be. I found that film to be wildly entertaining, and I was hoping that I was going to have the same fun watching this film, watching Abigail, as I did watching Ready or Not. Because the trailers for Abigail didn't really work for me. I mean, honestly, I thought the trailers for this film were awful. But I went to go and see it because it was getting some positive reviews. A lot of people were saying about how much fun it was, and I was hoping I was going to go to this film and have the same experience as I did watching Ready or Not for the first time last week. So, I went to cinema yesterday to see it, and the Google plot synopsis for the film goes as follows. A group of would-be criminals kidnaps the 12-year-old daughter of a powerful underworld figure, holding her for ransom in an isolated mansion. Their plan starts to unravel when they discover their young captive is actually a bloodthirsty vampire. And that's pretty much all you need to know about Abigail before seeing this film. And honestly, I thought this film was absolutely awful. This film was not for me, and I really hated it. But just before I get into the reasons that this film didn't work for me, I should say that I am not a big horror movie fan. And I can totally understand why some big horror movie fans would go to cinema to watch this film and, you know, find it to be a lot of fun. I wish I had that experience, and I'm jealous if you did have that experience. If you went to cinema and you really enjoyed that movie, and you really enjoyed this film, because I don't want to take that away from you whatsoever. If you enjoyed this film, that's great. But personally, I thought it was atrocious. I hated this movie so much, because I'm not sure what it wants to be. If you look on Google or on IMDb, this film is credited under the genres of horror and thriller. It says it's a horror thriller film. But the thing is, this film isn't scary at all, nor is it thrilling. And at the same time, it has these quote-unquote comedic moments, which aren't funny at all. And I'm sat there thinking, is this meant to be a horror comedy? Because I'm not sure at all. The tone of this film is all over the place. I didn't care about any of the characters in this film whatsoever. The performances, for the most part, there is one golden nugget in the bunch, but for the most part, the performances are really not that great, and I didn't believe in anything going on. I just thought it wasn't tongue-in-cheek enough, because the idea for this film is there's a ballerina vampire. That should be so funny and stupidly enjoyable to watch. The idea of a ballerina vampire going about killing people, but it's taken so seriously in parts to the point that I'm like, what is this film? And it's almost 2 hours long. But it felt like it was almost 3 hours long. This was one of the worst cinema experiences I have had watching a movie at the cinema for such a long while. I really detested this film because I don't know what it is. I'm not sure what the filmmakers were going for. I don't even think they know what they were going for. Is it meant to be a straight up horror movie? I don't know. Do the filmmakers know? Because it doesn't feel like they do when they're making the movie. Is it meant to be a thriller? I don't know. Is it meant to be a horror comedy? I don't know, but I don't think so. But the comedic moments, which feel really shoehorned in and don't work at all with the rest of the tone of the film. Is it meant to be a straight-up vampire movie? I don't know, and to be honest, I don't care. Because it's all over the place, this movie, in terms of tone, in terms of filmmaking, in terms of everything about this film. It's a complete and utter shambles. And I really struggled watching this film. I struggled to get invested in anything, and I found it to be incredibly predictable as well, to the point that in the opening minutes of the film, I guessed the final couple of minutes of the film, and I was right. I was 100% correct. I guessed what was going to happen in the end, and then when it was happening, I was like, oh yeah, okay, here we go, I know. I guessed this 2 hours ago, at least it felt like I guessed it 2 hours ago, and you just wasted so much of my time, because, right, if it is meant to be a straight-up horror movie, let's assume it is, it's not scary at all. You know, the best horror films get under your skin, make you feel uneasy, make you feel uncomfortable from the get-go. One of my favourite horror movies is The Silence of the Lambs, because it does that from the beginning. Another one of my favourite horror movies is John Carpenter's The Thing, because from the opening seconds of that film, I am like, God, what's this film? It's started getting under my skin, and I've got 2 hours left to watch. God, now this is a proper horror movie. Watching Abigail, the opening minutes of the film, I was like, I don't care about any of these characters whatsoever. This film hasn't given me a reason to care about any of these characters, nor do I care about what they're doing. I already know the premise of the film. I already know this sort of kind of funny idea they got going on with a ballerina vampire, but they're taking forever to get to it. I just don't care. None of the film is that scary, because, as I already mentioned, the best horror movies get under your skin and don't just rely on jump scares. Personally, I find jump scares to be, for the most part, cheap. I don't mind some jump scares in films, don't get me wrong. There are some jump scares which work quite well. But jump scares, what? They elicit an emotion for like 30 seconds and then it's over, and it's like, I feel they're cheap, to be honest. I feel they're cheap, and I feel that directors use them in horror movies because they are struggling to actually sustain a atmospheric sort of scariness. That doesn't make any sense. They're struggling to maintain the actual horror of the film, so they're just going to go jump scare to make you feel like you're actually watching a good horror movie. But personally, jump scares don't really work for me. And yet this film relies on jump scares a hell of a lot. It also relies on blood and gore a hell of a lot, similar to Radio Silence's previous movies, Scream 5, Scream 6, and Ready or Not. And I didn't mind it so much in those movies. I mean, I didn't like Scream 5 or Scream 6, but I didn't hate them as much as I hated this film. Because the thing is, in this movie, there is so much blood and gore to the point that it felt like the filmmakers, it felt like the directors were behind the camera going, right, this scene is meant to be scary because we're using a lot of blood and gore. Honestly, just keep throwing blood and gore at the screen in this movie. I'm like, for God's sakes, this is not really that entertaining, and it's not working in making me feel that uneasy or that uncomfortable. It's just making me think, well, that's a lot of blood and gore. Have you got anything else going for you? These guys deserve a medal. They deserve a gold medal for blowing up people in their movies. Like, they did it in Ready or Not. Spoiler there for people who haven't seen the film. But anyway, they did it in Ready or Not, and they do it again in this film. And it's like, for God's sake, can you not think of anything else to do to these characters? Stop, people talk about, oh, they're throwing things at the wall, or they're throwing things at the ceiling with it. They're just throwing spaghetti at the wall with ideas and movies nowadays. People talk about that with blockbuster films nowadays. Whilst in this film, it feels like they're throwing blood at the wall. It's like, oh, we can't think of anything else to do. More blood and gore! Because this scene is meant to be scary, but it isn't scary at all. Plus, the best horror movies have something to say. Late Night with the Devil, which came out early this year, I liked that film so much. I loved that film even because it had something to say. It was all about, the lengths that people go for fame and for power and for greed and everything like that. It's the lengths that people go for to keep their status. You know what I mean? If you watch that film, you will know what I mean. But this film isn't about anything, at least as far as I can tell. I mean, I was thinking, what is this film actually about when I was watching it? Because I wasn't that taken by it, I wasn't that engaged by what was going on, so I was starting to think about other things. And I was thinking, what is this film actually about? You know? And I was thinking, is it about the fact that you shouldn't kidnap girls and take them away from their father? But that's just common sense, you know? No shit, Sherlock, if it's about that. Because it's... What is this film trying to say? You shouldn't get involved with the wrong group of people? I mean, how many horror movies have said that in the past? It's just... it's ridiculous, this film. It's so bad. And the performances really didn't work for me, for the most part. The one performance that did work for me was the young girl who plays this ballerina vampire, Abigail. And this young girl is Alicia Weir. She was in Matilda the musical a couple of years back. I didn't watch that film, but she was meant to be great in it. She is the only person in this film who feels like she understands the assignment. She feels like she understands what sort of film this actually is. More than the filmmakers do, more than the directors did. That's what it kind of feels like, you know? Because, honestly, she was giving off the best performance of all of these actors. And we have some, you know, half-decent actors in this film. Melissa Barrera has been in a fair share of movies recently, whether it's In the Heights, she was in Scream 5 and Scream 6 as well. And she was fine in those movies. She's not that good in this film. It feels like she's taking it way too seriously, and more serious than the filmmakers are taking it. I really didn't like her performance. Additionally, something really annoyed me about her character, and that was in the second half of the film, she's just wearing these tight clothes, similar to what she does in the Scream films, and it annoyed me because all it makes me think when a female character that is wearing tight clothes, is that the filmmakers want you to focus on her body because she's an attractive She's an attractive She's an attractive female. You know, she's an attractive female. Let's focus on her body because actually we've got nothing else visually that interesting going on. That's what it makes me think when someone, particularly a female actor, is wearing tight clothes in a movie. It just makes me think, oh, the filmmakers have done that on purpose because they know nothing else visually that interesting is going on. And I really didn't like that decision. I didn't think Melissa Barrera, I can't pronounce her name. I didn't think Melissa Barrera was particularly that good in the film. I didn't think Catherine Newton was really that good either, to the point that I thought Catherine Newton was miscast and it felt like she was in a completely different film. I don't know what Catherine Newton was doing in this movie. I genuinely don't know what she was going for. Her character was unbelievably annoying, and her performance, again, I don't know what she was going for. Really not that good at all, and quite annoying at times, completely off key with the rest of the movie. I mean, the tone of the film is all over the place, and she enforced that. You know, she helped emphasise the fact that the tone of the film was all over the place because her performance is all over the place. I really don't understand what her character was there for, nor do I understand what Catherine Newton was going for with her performance. I'm sure she's a great actor. She was fine in Ant-Man 3, which came out last year. She was fine in that film, but I really didn't like her in this movie. Really didn't like her in this film at all. And Dan Stevens, who I was hoping was going to be a lot of fun to watch because he was a lot of fun to watch in the most recent Godzilla and Kong movie, I don't know what he was going for either. It felt like he was in a completely different movie to Melissa Barrera and Catherine Newton and the rest of the cast. I was watching and going, what? Why is he acting all that cool and trying to take everything too seriously, but then also trying to be a bit funny at the same time? I didn't think Dan Stevens was particularly good in the film either. And Giancarlo Esposito, who is beginning, you know, whenever he shows me in something, he just makes me smile. He is wasted in this film. Utterly wasted. The performances, for the most part, don't really work. And the idea for this film, and I'm not sure I've already mentioned this already, but the idea for this film doesn't make a 2-hour movie. It just doesn't. The idea of a ballerina vampire is something that's funny, and you know, you think it's unique for about 5 seconds, and then you realise actually that's not a great idea and it couldn't make a 2-hour movie. But guess what? They try and make an almost 2-hour movie out of it and it doesn't work. At best, this idea could have made a 30-minute short film, not an almost 2-hour movie, because it doesn't make a 2-hour film. A ballerina vampire. Why did you have to be a ballerina as well? That didn't really make any sense to me. It could have just been a vampire. It could have just been a young girl vampire. And I think it would have been the exact same film. I don't get the whole ballerina aspect of it, but okay, keep that in there. It still doesn't constitute a 2-hour movie. I know it's not 2 hours, but it's almost 2 hours. You understand the point I'm making? It really didn't work for me. There's nothing interesting about any of the characters. There's nothing compelling about anything going on. And the comedic moments, the moments which are meant to be quote-unquote funny, are not funny at all. They're just... None of this film really worked for me that much. I mean, there were some kind of interesting things that you can see what they're going for, but I say kind of there because it's really, none of it's that entertaining, none of it's that interesting, none of it's that compelling, and the whole film is like, what the hell are they going for? If I was to try and talk about some more positives, I would say that you can tell this is from Radio Silence. At least you can tell it's one of their movies. They have a sense of authorship. I don't really like their style of directing. You can tell this is from the same people who made Scream 5, Scream 6, and Ready or Not. However, I also don't mean that as a good thing, because I really want to see these directors do something really different. And instead, this film felt like it was trying to capture that same... I don't want to say magic, because I don't think the first Ready or Not... I don't think Ready or Not was... lightning. I don't think it was particularly brilliant or anything. I just thought it was a lot of fun. But it feels like they're trying to capture that same energy and that same kind of movie that Ready or Not was. That's what this film feels like they're trying to do. They're trying to do Ready or Not, but with vampires. And instead I would have liked them to do something really different. Do something that isn't so reliant on somebody who is killing people, going around killing people in one location. They did that with Scream. They did that with the Scream movies, the Scream movies they directed, and they did that with Ready or Not. Although Ready or Not was kind of the opposite idea, but still, it was... Yes, you can tell this is a movie from Radio Silence, and yes, you can tell these guys have got their own style, but I also don't think that's a particularly good thing, because it's a style which isn't really great and feels a little... I don't know what I'm trying to get to here, but it just doesn't really work for me. That's what I'm saying. And I do... Yes, it's a Radio Silence film, and yes, you can tell it's a Radio Silence film, but I also don't mean that in a good way, because there was some parts of the film which made me think, well, you've already done that in your previous movies. Like, stop just throwing blood and gore at the wall in your movies. Actually try and make them scary, you know? And again, trying to talk about some positives with this movie, you can see what they were going for. It's not a terrible idea. There is something behind what they were going for as well. And I want to reiterate, if you enjoy this film, because I know a lot of people have been enjoying this movie, and that's awesome. So if you are enjoying this film, if you did enjoy this movie, that's what I meant to say there. If you did enjoy this film, that's great. I'm super jealous of you. But oh my god, I really hated it. I hated this movie so much. It should have been so much more tongue-in-cheek. And there's a couple of moments when they try and be tongue-in-cheek, like Catherine Newton's character at one point goes, oh my god, it's a ballerina vampire, completely off tone with the rest of the film. But she says that at one point in the movie, and I was like, okay, yeah, lean into that a bit more, but they don't. And it becomes all about this vampire mythology towards the end, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Really? This is so bad. And the finale of the film went on and on and on to the point that I was excited to leave the cinema. I never thought I'd say that in a review. I was excited to leave the cinema after watching this yesterday. I hated them because nothing about this film is enjoyable in my opinion. Nothing about this film is particularly interesting. Nothing about it is exciting. Nothing about it is scary. Nothing about it is thrilling. And it's meant to be a horror thriller, but I think it fails miserably in that regard. Nothing about it is funny, and there are meant to be some comedic moments, at least I think there are. Nothing about it is emotional, and there's meant to be this emotional through line with Melissa McBair, can't pronounce her flipping name, with Melissa McBair's character, but it doesn't work at all. Nothing about it is just that good, and nothing about it feels that original, or that creative, or that inventive. It feels like I've seen most of what this film does, and most of what this film did in other horror movies. And I've seen it done better. I was sitting there watching the film thinking, God, I really wish I was watching Shaun of the Dead right now. And Shaun of the Dead is not a straight up horror movie. It's a horror comedy. In fact, it's actually advertised as a romantic comedy with zombies. But that movie has more scary moments than this film does, and that film is also far funnier than this film is, and that film is also more thrilling than that film is. That film is overall, Shaun of the Dead is overall far more entertaining than this film is. This film I hated. It was not for me. Not for me at all. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Abigail, I'm going to say it's a 2 out of 10. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10 because I did think the young girl's performance was actually pretty good. And you've got to admire the amount of gore they tried to put on the screen with this movie. I do kind of admire what they were going for. Although I don't really at the same time, because it's not a good idea. What I'm saying, it's not a good idea. I'm giving it a 2 out of 10 because I found small parts of the film kind of interesting and kind of entertaining. Nothing really that special. Yeah, I'm giving it a 2 out of 10 mainly for the main girl's performance, mainly for the young girl's performance. She was actually pretty good in the film. This young ballerina vampire. Everything else, absolute rubbish. I never want to watch this film again because I'm not sure what it wants to be, and I don't think the film knows what it wants to be either. This film should have been stupidly enjoyable, but instead it's just plain stupid. It's awful. Really awful, and I'm done talking about it. It wasn't for me, and let's just leave it at that, shall we? And so, all in all, as I've already said, and as I'm going to say once more in today's podcast, Abigail is a 2 out of 10 for me. Anyway guys, that's it for today's podcast. If you have seen Abigail and you enjoyed it, again, I want to reiterate, that's great. Super happy for you, and please let me know why I'm wrong in the comment section below. Or maybe you watched Abigail and felt similar to me. Whatever your thoughts are on this film, please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching or listening to me on this podcast. If you did listen to me on this podcast on Spotify, thank you to my Spotify listeners, and you should also know they can check this podcast out visually. Yes, you can watch this podcast on my YouTube channel at Nights of the Movies on that platform. And as I said, whether you watched or listened to this podcast, thank you for watching or listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast. Maybe you thought it could have been better, and like and subscribe then as well, because you can tell me how it's going to be better in future, how it should be better in future podcasts. Man, this is a long outro. As we said twice, and I'm going to say a third time now, thank you so much for watching or listening, and I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon, but bye for now. Bye.